All right, everybody. Attention, everybody. I think it's time to start proceedings. Yep, thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the Atheist Society for our lecture on Thursday, the 10th of July. And today, we'd like to welcome Nick Cikron, first-time speaker here, so well done. Just one thing about the Atheist Society. We don't have a formal definition of atheism. Everything's up for discussion, but we would like to allow the speaker to continue his talk, and then we'll have question and answer afterwards. And if there's points of clarification, perhaps we could intervene for those. So now today, Nick is talking on the evolution of ethics. Thank God for secular humanism. It sounds a very worthy cause, but my only question is which God, man? Which God? Anyway, welcome to Nick.
Thank you very much for that, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends. I hope I've covered everybody. Now, thanks for coming out on a cold, wet winter's evening to listen to a relative stranger talk about a subject we're all experts in. I mean, let's be quite frank. We've all argued, debated ethics and morals, which are fundamentally about what is right and what is wrong. And we use ethics and morals every day in our life, and even possibly every hour. The issues that we pay attention to, the manner in which we address them, the behaviours we exhibit consciously, are all to a large degree driven by our ethical and moral and beliefs. Now, of course, some moral traditions also believe that even thought crime is a sin. You remember Jesus in Matthew 28 tells us that whoever looks upon a woman with lust is actually committing sin in his heart, and it's probably better for him to pluck his eye out and throw it out. Jesus, Matthew 28, because it's causing you to sin, and it's better to go to heaven with only one eye than to miss out. Sorry, probably something similar. Sorry, no, I haven't actually. No. Do you know? Is it the same? But anyway, yeah. So I was going to say, as I'm looking around, I can't see any one-eyed men, which must indicate that we're all very pure. So that's one big tick for us, guys, and tick for us. On an interesting side point, it's interesting that in the same chapter, and I must admit, I can't even think of any verse in scripture which actually tells women not to look at men lustfully. Which is interesting. It's probably a bit of a side point, but yeah, always thought it was a woman's world. Maybe another confirmation. Now on a more serious note, the evolution of ethics is a big subject. As you can appreciate, there's been volumes written on it, books, debates. So of course, I'm only going to present a very small sliver of what I perceive it to be. And of course, you can probably tell by the title that I'm obviously probably fairly much in agreement. Now, I thought I would just say a little bit about my background for the pseudo philosophers and psychologists, or any real psychologists who might be listening or who might want an angle on me. I was born in the former Yugoslavia in the late 50s, which of course, after the civil wars in the 80s and the 90s, was divided into 7 countries. In late 66, we migrated here with my parents and my twin brother. And December 1966, we walked off the station pier in good old Port Melbourne with our suitcases under our arms to start a new life in a new country of milk and honey. not quite, but compared to the old country, it was certainly very, very much better. Even though in communist Yugoslavia, religion wasn't banned, it was difficult, and you certainly couldn't get any decent jobs, especially if you didn't want to work on a Saturday. That'll become evident in a few minutes. Our sponsors, which you had to have, our sponsors shipped us off to Geelong because they wanted to grow the small Yugoslav Seventh-day Adventist church, which is what I was born into and brought up. Very shortly after that, my parents decided to join the large English church that was there, also a Seventh-day Adventist. And I must say, a lot of people have negative experiences with churches. I must say that the church, and I suppose more technically, the members were actually very good to us, especially after our father died, shortly after arriving, 5, 6 years later, when both my brother and I were only 14. They were very good. So yeah, I don't have a lot of complaints about the church per se. It's more, I suppose, the teachings. The other thing is our parents were very religious, as you could probably gather by that. So you could probably classify them as both economic and religious migrants. They were coming in for a better life. They also wanted to escape the tyranny of having to worship on a Saturday, number one, which is difficult. And secondly, there was always unpleasantness, even though there wasn't probably, well, I can't remember because I was basically only 8. I can't remember any open hostilities. I've talked to other Yugoslav people over the years, and some felt that there certainly was considerable difficulty. As I said, we didn't experience that, but yeah, we came for more freedom. Education-wise, after finishing high school, I sort of did a few jobs just to get money, as money was a bit tight, as you can imagine. Did a few courses in marketing, business, started a Bachelor of Philosophy and Psychology, but I only did a few subjects. Found that chasing girls was probably a little more interesting at that stage. I did in mid-90s as an adult, complete a graduate diploma in human resource management. And basically most of my life has been either in recruitment or more recently with my brother with property conveyancing and finance. Now, as you can see, I've always had a bent towards philosophy, psychology, and trying to understand the world around me, around us. So question is why did I choose this topic? Well, for a few reasons. One is that after I sort of left the church, I did a lot of reading in evolutionary psychology. And I actually thought that was possibly one of the best explanations for human nature. And the other thing that I've noticed over the last 20 years, and I'd be interested in your comments after, is that society seems to be trending into 3 rather divided camps. One is probably what we call the woke. The other is the conservative traditionalists. And I've noticed even some of the younger people in that group are actually starting to attend church, sometimes for the first time in their mid-20s, which was a phenomenon which I never really observed when I was younger. If you went to church, you basically went because you went from birth. And the third group are those that really don't give a continental about anything except their own families, their daily lives and their careers. Now, of course, all these 3 groups are on a continuum. Some extreme, someone more moderate. And as we know, modern society has been dividing itself among ideological and political lines for decades. So there's nothing particularly new. But from my observation, I think that they're becoming more extreme, and I suppose the economic divide and the housing divide. But one thing that I've noticed that really seems to unite the whole 3 groups is, and probably maybe the strongest or the first point, is that they all seem to display a strong dislike, or at least a total lack of appreciation for Western liberal values. 2, an unabashed willingness to fiercely argue about issues and topics they have no actual knowledge of, certainly no underlying knowledge or facts, and no historical context around the time or place where the issues occurred that they're trying to debate. Now, maybe that's just my screwed up a circle of friends, but that's what I've really noticed. It's very hard to have a debate with people that are, very on even not so much opposite, but different views. Third, I've noticed is a real or deliberate lack of a nuance. The ability to see shades rather than simply black and white, I would have thought was a feature of becoming mature. 4, almost total disinterest in fact-checking, which is relatively easy these days. I have for years, after I had a debate and someone brought up something new, I would either fact-check my own knowledge or understanding or theirs. These days, you can go off and have an argument, and 3-4 days later or 2 weeks later, say, oh, did you actually check my information? No, I couldn't be bothered. Just so entrenched in their position. That's nothing I'm finding new. And the fifth, I think I'm up to 5, yeah. And the fifth thing is often totally disinterested in attempting to find any kind of a solution. Criticism is viewed as the highest value and an end in itself. While they love criticizing your ideas, they become very quickly and very prickly about you criticizing their ideas, and generally do not understand the distinction between critical analysis, critical thinking, and just simple criticism. Now, I think those distinctions are important. Now, personally, I actually find it very sad because I've always enjoyed debate, even at church. That's one big thing I sort of noticed between the Adventist church, and then I married a Catholic girl, pretty a liberal, but we would go to mass on the main days like most people do. And they would sort of shuffle off into the church, shuffle out like little rats, go back to their places. That was it. For Adventism, you would usually discuss the sermon, the topic, pull the minister apart or his sermon. That was sort of quite accepted. But the few times that I tried to even engage with a priest, again, that could be because of the ones that I met, there was almost this condescending attitude, how dare do you question anything which I have said? I found that also a bit perturbing. But as I said, I find this sad because it's hard to have a good debate, and especially regarding the first point about the strong dislike and lack of appreciation for Western liberal values. Personally, I feel that the Enlightenment has brought so many benefits to humanity, and especially now, that's probably my evangelical side coming out. I think we need a return and a revival of Enlightenment values, ethics and ideas more than ever. Now, I won't go into a lot of definitions. I think most of us know what ethics are, but just briefly, ethics represent the beliefs of the broader community and their extended group that one lives in. Morals, on the other hand, are your personal, internal, and often intense sense of what is right and wrong. Now, of course, as you can imagine, there's quite an interplay there. One of them silence, and then I'm like, well, we go to the aqueduct, okay, they go to sanitation, irrigation. Then I think John Cleese comes in and says, all right. So beside the aqueduct, sanitation, irrigation, what else have the Romans given us? Sorry? Yeah, that's it. This is one of them. Medicine, education, wine, public baths, law and order, and peace. Really much. I think John Cleese says, well, okay, beside those things, what have they actually given us? So before we actually go into what Enlightenment Enlightenment has done for us as an entry, or more really as a lived nightmare. Let's remember and remind ourselves of the dark places where we as a species have come from. So if you this is that's a big chart which I couldn't reproduce, but just some of the horrendous acts that man has been doing to each other since the dawn of civilization. We'll start a little list until we probably start feeling a bit queasy. Execution of victims, torture, execution of heretics, torture of criminal suspects, executions without trial, torture, execution of witches, white male suffrage, there was none back, the church and the state totally combined, freedom of speech unprotected, freedom of press, there was none, freedom of religion unprotected, torture of convicts, slavery, government use of torture, public executions as entertainment, education was only for the very privileged few, legality of divorce was in actual fact up until not that long ago criminalised. And I also believe that in the Philippines it still is, I heard the other day. Women's autonomy, absolutely not. They were basically the legal property of men. Torture of natives of any type, lynching of blacks, that was in America. Suffrage denied based on gender, food regulations none, dangerous child labour, minimum wage none, 60 plus hour work week, nobody would prosecute you, six-day week, legality of blasphemy was criminalised, wars of conquest, regularly fought, organised mass slaughter of Jews, not accepted, forced underage marriage, prisoners of war protection, none, workplace safety protections, absolutely none. I heard the other day, especially with the opening of the Notre Dame in Paris, apparently the building that 200 years because they ran out of money and blah, blah, blah. And apparently that took generations of families out. The grandfather started, he'd fall off, die, get crushed by a rock. His son would follow him when he grew up. Same fate happened to him. And then his the original guy's great-grandson, same fate. And when you sort of so it puts a slightly different complexion when you look at these magnificent buildings at the human suffering that was due. Racial segregation, as we know, was only abolished in America in about 67. Most of us were alive. In Australia, when did we give Aborigines the right to vote? I think it was 67 as well, yeah. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think it was around there anyway. Racial discrimination was legal, and these are all within our lifetime. Child beating, discrimination against disabled was legal. Spousal rape, yeah, was legal. Wasn't even considered as a crime. Rights of homosexuals, none. Equal rights regardless of gender, not guaranteed. Equal pay of race. These are all the things that have actually happened just in our lifetime, that have actually been prohibited, or we find them morally unacceptable. Now, of course, we still have some way to go, but I think that if you look at all the evidence, I think that it clearly points towards progress. Of course, progress, and this is what I suppose the other thing I'm talking about this subject is if you listen to a lot of podcasts and relatively intelligent people, they sort of think that all these things just happen. The, the amount of public disdain or or the enlightenment, I just find astonishing. The new attack was basically by white men for white men. Which when we look at that list of achievements, how you can come to that conclusion, okay, admittedly they certainly haven't been accepted everywhere around the world. I mean, is that kind of our fault? Something we can discuss later. Okay, so I thought now we'd have a look at the actual main tenets of 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 enlightenment values. First one, which I think is pretty up there, is reason and skepticism. You know? Enlightenment thinkers believe that reason, the ability to think logically, critically, and analytically, is the prime tool for understanding the world and solving human problems. I just don't know anyone can argue with that. Individual liberty, autonomy, human nature, and natural rights. Again, this idea emphasized the importance of individual rights and freedoms. This includes freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to self-determination. And the idea of a, I can't even read that, of a, sorry, and the idea of human capacity for pain and pleasure. If we remember, especially back in the old, aren't they old anyway, days of slaves, I suppose one of the justifications is they actually were subhuman and couldn't quite feel the same pain as we do. Of course, the other great idea of enlightenment was secularization, a separation of religion and government, focus on worldly affairs rather than the religious matters. While religion was not rejected outright, Enlightenment thinkers believed that it would not dictate political or scientific knowledge. Then we've got that. We do believe in progress, as we call it. Another part of the in Enlightenment belief was believing the possibility of human progress. We argue that societies could improve through the application of reason, science, and education. And value fueled the ideas of social, political, and scientific progress. 5 is imperialism and the scientific method. Enlightenment placed great emphasis on imperialism, the idea that knowledge comes from sensory experience and observation of the world, and the scientific method as a way to investigate and understand reality. Equality and justice. The idea fostered the idea that all individuals are born equal and deserve equal rights under the law. It was a challenge to the traditional hierarchies of kings, aristocrats, and clergy, advocating a more egalitarian society. Of course, those movements sort of led to democracy, the abolition of slavery, as well as women's rights, and pluralism. Sorry, I actually did have a little start. It's a lot nervous. It's just the way I was born. I try to hide it. Sometimes it comes out. The Enlightenment advocated for tolerance, especially religious tolerance and respect for diverse beliefs and cultures. Enlightenment thinkers argued that no belief system should have absolute authority. Now, on a personal level, I actually do think that some idea, sorry, that not all ideas are equal. And some ideas certainly have a slightly more value. Democracy and representative government. Enlightenment thinkers emphasise the importance of democracy and popular sovereignty, with the political power derived from the people rather than the monarchs or religious authorities. They believe that individuals should have a voice in their grievance. That gave rise to the constitution of the democracies, the idea of separation of powers and checks and balances. Of course, education. Education was a big thing, as we said before on the other list. Education really throughout history. Talking to some of the education people I know here, something actually really taken seriously in the early 1900s. Right? Before that, there was no sort of really free public education system. It's then when we started involving government schools and all that good stuff. Now, the question comes, and I feel needs to be asked. Now, what has and of course we've got the perfect. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We've got the official documents in the next 24, no, it's 23, and we're going to 30 articles. Obviously, we don't all, most countries don't, I was going to say about all of them, probably by a few of them, at least it's there. At least we've got a guide stick. Now, I was going to have a quick look at what's the alternative. So let's look at the moral progress. Now, I'm mainly talking about Christianity because that's what I know most about, that I was involved with for sort of half my life, right? Sorry? Well, if I'm allowed back, I'll study the Quran next time for you if you like. Now, sorry? Oh, yeah. I'm coming. Don't worry. Catholicism, right? Now, I've had the same bit of sarcasm. I had the pleasure of going to a number of masses since I met my wife, and I hope she's not watching, and just the tedium. Every sermon is basically the same. They always have the Eucharist, whether it's a wedding, a funeral, a baptism, it's always the same. That's, I'm going to come back to that with the concept as known the opportunity cost. Now, the only progress that I can think, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, that I think in the not 60s, yeah, probably the 60s, 70s, there was a movement in the Catholic Church in South America that I thought, got the name, but a liberation theology. That's it, yeah. And that was sort of some priests sort of going more towards the left. Now, I also believe that this current Pope has some sort of involvement because even though he's American, he did spend a fair bit of time. But he's also, but by the traditionalists, he is very much criticised. So we haven't really had much progress there. And of course, on the other side of Catholicism, you also got a movement which actually wants to have maths back in Latin. It's just almost incomprehensible. You're going to go and listen to someone babble in a language you don't understand. It's a Protestantism. That's very much the same. It has progressed, sadly, the other way. If you go to some of these big mega churches, It's all about what's known as prosperity gospel. Right? If you pay enough tithes, if you pray hard enough, you're going to be rich, like the minister is preaching, right? Who are literally owns the church. And of course, these guys are on $1 million salaries. They fly around the world in their private jets. And it's the Muppet parishioners that keep giving them money in the hope that one day they will also become wealthy like him. Which of course we know they won't. Right? Sorry, who? Oh yeah, there's a bloke just recently, I think he got convicted, John Oster, if you look him up, yeah, and in actual fact, if you go to, what's his name, died as well. No, I can give you a whole Wikipedia page. Can't rattle them off. There's a whole Wikipedia page. You know that bloke, Jimmy Bakker, that got caught, you know, this parishioner got in front of the pulpit. Oh, I'm single. What? You know, Jimmy Bakker, yeah. And someone died. Sorry. Oh, it's gone even worse. Look up mega churches. Sorry? Have a look at mega churches. That is really the whole gospel now. Right? It's just unbelievable. So yeah, that's certainly gone worse. So yeah, and of course we know about our Muslim brothers and sisters. Well, what progress do we expect from them? I'm just asking. So, oh yeah. Well, okay. The religious Jews. I mean, they spend their entire life. It's not sure. So right now, we call the religious Jews. I mean, I'm sorry, my Jewish friends, I've got quite a few, but they're all more they are all, of course, more secular. But yeah, you could easily argue that the really traditional ones who do nothing all their life except study the Torah, they haven't contributed a great deal. If you have a look at the secular ones, well, their achievements are just unbelievable. They are off the chart. If you have a look at the amount of the Nobel prizes in medicine, science, mathematics that the Jews have got. Sorry? Yeah. Well, it's the ethic. Okay. Now, remember what I said that at the beginning that we need the Enlightenment values now more than ever. So I'm not quite sure if you folk are familiar with the term eschatology. Eschatology is in theology concerned with the final events of human history. So I've got I'm going to make you happy now. In Judaism, right? It's the Messiah or the Mashiach, yeah, a human descendant of King David who will be anointed as king. He will restore Israel, build the temple in Jerusalem, and bring global peace. A future era of peace and divine harmony can refer to afterlife, after death, or do I say Messianic age. Now, because as the old saying goes, if you've got two Jews in a room, you've got three opinions, they argue about everything. So that probably isn't quite as concrete as it is in Christianity. Judgment, while not central, some sources mention a divine judgment, in particular for Gentile nations, of course, that's us, and heaven or hell. Again, some do, some don't. But later Judaism includes concept of Gan Eden and Geonim. a purgatory-like state, not eternal damnation. Christianity, which I'm very familiar with, the second coming of Christ, which is actually the title of Seventh-day Adventist. Adventist is the Advent. Jesus will return to defeat evil, that means all the bad people, resurrect the dead and establish God's kingdom. Resurrection and judgment, all the dead will be resurrected and judged. The righteous enter hell, and the wicked are condemned to hell forever and ever and ever. Amen. Hell and heaven, these are eternal destinations. Heaven in communion with God, hell is eternal separation. Now hell is eternal separation. That's actually quite a modern term. Usually it actually means eternal damnation with the devil. So they're sort of trying to fudge that one a little bit. Then there's also various things about the rapture and the tribulation. Some denominations believe a period of suffering before Christ's return, during which believers may be taken up to heaven. Relevant in some evangelical beliefs that, this is sort of a little bit of a scary part. And I've actually listened to numerous sermons on this, right? Based on Revelation 20 interpretations, so that there are Christ returns before a 1,000-year reign. Then there are various prophecies. I remember sitting in the church, probably 80s, yeah, and the preacher would come in with that Time magazine with have invented a new, more deadly nuclear weapon, waving it around and saying, isn't this fantastic? The end of the world is coming. That's the whole emphasis. You've got to be good here. The end will come. There'll be a massive, some believe will happen in Israel or in the Middle East, over Mount Sinai where the commandments were given. There'll be an almighty fight, and in the middle of the world, literally blowing up, Christ will come back. Take the good ones with him. Now, Islam, my friend up here, apparently Islam's end time theology is detailed and integral part to faith, forming part of the 6 articles of belief. Day of judgment, essential event when all humans are resurrected and judged by Allah. And signs of the end time include moral decay, wars, and the return of significant figures. A gentleman called Mahdi, a Messianic figure who will restore justice. Isa, which apparently is Jesus, will return, defeat the false Messiah, and will justly, resurrection and judgment. Everyone is resurrected and judged based on deeds. The book of deeds is presented. Heaven, Jannah, and hell, Jannah. Eternal places of reward and punishment. Descriptions are often vivid and physical. All souls must cross it, and only the righteous succeed. So have you been following that? Sorry? Well, definitely the Quran, if you like, because the Quran is most of them have a separate one, and of course the Sunnis have a slightly different version to the absolutely. Of course they sort of interpret some of it. Of course, it doesn't actually say it's the Mount Sinai, but they go through back into the Old Testament and with it. But yeah, I can, if you like, I can give you lots and lots of references. Yeah, this is, and that's fact. A lot of the Middle East conflict. A lot of people like to think, it's about land. Oh, no, it's not about land. Even what's his name? Christopher Hitchens used to say, it's not about land. What do you call it? The Jews in actual fact had an option to come into Central Australia in the early 1900s, but no, they wanted to go back to their homeland, their ancestral homeland, the Muslims of the day, well, and today, of course, it's their land. And I had an argument once with a famous Australian filmmaker. He actually died recently, and he made a video. Write it down, and he made a film about Israel, and he was talking to a settler in the West Bank, right? And John Pilger, right? And I saw him. Sorry, I'm a journalist. Yeah, some people do. I actually met him in Ellison. He was here for a meeting. That was like, right, I can say maybe 6, 7 months after his movie came out. I was trying to have a conversation with him about, because he also sort of felt that it wasn't land, right? That it was, that it was land. And in the movie, I specifically remember he was talking to a settler of the West Bank, and he asked this settler, you keep telling me that it's your land. Who gave it to you? And the settler looked straight into Pilgrim's face and said, God, of course. With this amazing incredulity that how could he even ask him such a question? Of course God gave it to them. And really, that's why I suppose I really like the stuff based on science and reason, because you can't actually reason with people like that. Right? If someone tells you that I told you to do this, and another person tells you that God told them to do that, there's just no negotiating room. That's it. And of course, now that we've got nukes in the we've got nukes in the Middle East, Israel's got nukes. These people aren't actually afraid of dying. If they think that's a glorious way to go into heaven, it's a very hard position to debate or understand, especially from the Western mindset. And the only reason I would say that is because I've actually lived it. I have been at Tonga with my friends. I still catch up with occasionally. And I've got friends in the Adventist church, and of course they're more moderate, right? And a lot of them are really, really nice people. I could show you my phone, but they still send me texts of some preacher or whatever, telling them that the war is going to end. Like when they were having a fight between Iran and Israel, they went berserk. And this was happy days. The war was going to start blowing up. Christ was going to return. We were going to have it. They were having a field day with my phone. Something that I sort of take the mickey out of them sometimes. But as I said, in conclusion, one reason why I sort of didn't go for the pure secular humanism, we call it, virtues, or because I think that for the average punter, I think they're a little bit hard to understand, right? Sort of talk about free inquiry, separation of church and state, the idea of freedom, ethics based on critical intelligence, moral education, religious skepticism, reason, science, and technology. People sort of can't really read, sort of a lot of people say can't really understand sort of that complexity of moral reasoning. So I'm going to present you in conclusion with two versions of the commandments. One is the old commandments, and I don't know if you guys know them, just quickly. Number one, only worship the Christian God, not any other gods. Two, do not make or worship idols. Do not blaspheme the name of the Judaites. Back then it was just of God. One day a week worship the God instead of working, honoring honor and obey your mother, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony against your neighbor, do not yearn to possess your neighbor's wife, slaves, animals, or other belongings. Honor and obey your father and mother. I've been through those. Now, but if that comes to mind, now, I don't want to be harsh on my Christian friends, but if that's the best that the God of the universe can give to Moses, who goes up and actually sees the back of it. So this is, I think, a better version, okay? Never murder, rape, torture, or enslave, right? Now, if that was the first commandment, just imagine how much misery that would have solved. Never murder, rape, torture, or enslave. Never stalk, abuse, blackmail, physically intimidate, harass, degrade, or molest. Never defraud, bilk, rob, or otherwise unfairly exploit. 4. Avoid violence. Only threaten to use it to prevent greater suffering of innocent people, and only when it is very certain that non-violent measures will not be effective. And only when all reasonably available measures have been taken to minimize the suffering or violence that will incur. Uphold human rights for all, including the freedom of thought, expression, association, and religion, and the rights to liberty, equality, privacy, due process of law, basic education, peaceful assembly. Treat no one less fairly or less kindly on the basis of their gender, skin color, ethnic ancestry, age, health, body type, sexual orientation, financial status, physical or mental disability. 7. Minimize the suffering you cause directly or indirectly to sentient animals. Avoid altering the environment in ways that would endanger the health and happiness of future generations. 9. Help to seek aid for those in peril, so long as doing so is reasonably certain not to cause anyone grievous harm. Now, this 10th one, right, instead of do not yearn for the possessions of your neighbour's wife, slaves, animals, or other belongings. Nice place to put your wife, isn't it, with the animals and other belongings. Number 10, whenever you harm anyone through negligence, in abiding by these commandments, acknowledge the harm you've caused, sincerely apologise for it, and offer reasonable recompense when possible. I mean, just that commandment itself would literally wipe out the legal profession. If everyone was honest about the mistakes they made, owned up, said, okay, I'm sorry, we're human, the legal profession goes. I was sort of thinking, much better. And I'm like, God, I will finish with this quote, you know? Irrespective of which ones you go, let's be honest, Christianity has failed, all religions have failed us. Humans haven't on their own become much better. I think it's because of the institutions, the Enlightenment. Okay, we've had, what do you call it, the Enlightenment now for 200 years. I think we have got better by all the things that are written. And I think one of the reasons why it's so difficult is by that great guy, E.O. Wilson. Humans have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, but godlike technology. And that, I suppose, is the frightening thing, is because we actually are on the brink, or we have the capacity to destroy ourselves. And if we don't take a reasoned approach to life and morality, could all be in the big cooker. Of course, at my age, that's not such a terrifying thought. But I ain't got too many years to go. But I would certainly like there to be a better and a fairer world for my children. That'll close. Thanks for your tolerance. I went long.